This is the ninth grade. This is the F class, which is ahead of everybody. So at some point you can check this out. We're answering questions 46 through 48. And we just noticed somebody said, it may have been you, Celeste, how smart Henry is to use the name Harry Leroy, which disguises his real name, Henry the King, which is literally what that is translated as. I saw it, just if you can bear one little story. I saw this, it was a primary debate in Ohio, I think. So you had 4 candidates on a local TV stage, all of them running for the Senate, the Republican Senate candidacy. And then there'll be a Democratic candidacy, and the two will run in November. Anyway, one of the guys who was standing next to another guy, there were 3 people sitting there, all of them candidates. He turned to the guy sitting down, who's a former Marine, also Iraq or Afghanistan veteran. He says, "You, sir, have been unemployed for so many years." And the guy, being a Marine, stood up, and literally they got in each other's face, toe to toe. And this is in front of television, in front of an audience. And the Marine said, "I've served 4 years in Afghanistan, and you're saying I'm unemployed." And the guy, and they're back and forth. And he was being interviewed like a day later on TV, and he said, "Do you regret getting so angry at this guy?" And he said, "Oh no, we need to fight back, and we need to, not put out." He was insulting all the Marines, all the Navy guys, all the Army who are veterans, and to say that that's being unemployed, that that's not as important as being in the business world. But I thought of Henry V. I've thought of this a couple of times, including this time, but particularly the tennis ball scene, where he uses the insult against the person in a witty way, and that's what this guy didn't do, and probably could have done, and it would have been more effective instead of getting literally in his face and just calling names back and forth. If he had been as witty as Henry V, I don't know what he would have said. Maybe you could think of something. He said, "Unemployed," like, how would you turn that? That's what Henry would have done, into an insult against the person that is insulting you. And I couldn't think of a good comeback. And you have to, it's like that. You can't wait till 2 days later. I already know what I would say. You know how it is. You've been in a situation, and man, if you could have said it right then, you would have just blown it all away.
That always happens to me. I can't fall asleep. I think of all the things I could have said.
Anyway, so that's the answer to number 48. We can't do 49 yet. So let's begin. Who's our Gower? Okay, who's our Fluellen? We need Henry. Tate? Henry? Oh, okay. Who wants to be Bates? Seems like somebody. No, Jonathan, you'd be terrible for the job. No, you're perfect for the job. How about Court? You want to do that? And you could be Williams. Williams actually has more to say than Bates and Court.
William.
All right. So we're back on 141.
How do you say that? How do you say that word?
Pejorative. Pejorative means it's negative, but it's more than that. It's I can't think of the right. It's more condemning. If you call somebody a pejorative, you're calling them a negative name. That's not. I can't.
What does it start with?
P.
I'll write it on the board. Let me just get you a better definition. I'm frustrated with
Huh?
Why are you my business?
Okay, here we go. Pejorative. What am I doing? I just emailed my wife. Pejorative. Pejorative. That she said.
I hope she doesn't know what that means.
She does.
Oh.
Who, Siri?
Pejorative.
Wait, he said this one. He just
Email us.
I mean, I texted the word, just the word pejorative. All right, it's expressing contempt or disapproval. That's what I was trying to think of, a word. It's not just negative. It's calling somebody a disapproving name, a disparaging, derogatory name. That's a good word. You hear it a lot. All right, so, we go back to Gower and Fluellen. Gower.
Right. Well, 148, right?
141.
Put 41.
141.
Glad you asked.
I think that's where you left off with reading.
Oh, yeah, you're right, yes. You got
Ahead of everybody else as usual.
148.
Well, she said to start on.
All right. Where is Gower?
He's
I
the
know.
first one.
Oh, it's on 143. Thanks. All right. Captain Llewellyn.
So, in the name of Jesus Christ, speak fewer. It is the greatest admiration in the universal world when the true and ancient
Prerogatives. It should be tiv, but he mispronounces it.
and laws of the wars is not kept. If you would take the pains but to examine the wars of Pompey the Great, you shall find. I warn you that there is no tittle-tattle nor tittle-babble in Pompey's camp. I warn you, you shall find the ceremonies of the war and the cares of it and the forms of it and the sobriety of it and the modesty of it to be otherwise.
Why the enemy is loud, you hear him all night.
Mr. Powell?
I'm sorry.
Mr. Powell?
No. Yeah. You can never know.
Yes.
What to be.
So, they are trying to whisper because they don't want the enemy to hear them, and yet Gower says, why are you worried about that? They're loud, they're partying over there, and while we're trying to whisper. Llewellyn.
If the enemy is an ass and a fool and a prating coxcomb, is it meet, think you, that we should also look you, be an ass and a fool and a prating coxcomb, in your own conscience now?
Gower.
I will speak lower.
I pray you and beseech you that you will.
All right, Gower and Llewellyn exit. Henry shows up.
Though it appear a little out of fashion, there is much care and valor in this Welsh.
Who's bait?
All right, enter 3 soldiers, Bates, Court, and Weave. These are 3 common soldiers. Just peruse the page. What kind of language will they be speaking?
Plebeian language.
Well, but what do we call it? Essentially, that's what
Who's William?
prose. They're not poetry, but prose. And Henry will speak prose with them. Let's see, Bates, Court, and Weave.
Okay, that's what I was gonna ask.
Court.
Brother John Bates, is it not the morning which breaks yonder?
I think it be, but we have no great cause to desire the approach of day.
We see yonder the beginning of the day, but I think we shall never see the end of it. Who goes there?
A friend,
Under what captain serve you?
under Sir Thomas Erpingham.
A good old commander and a most kind gentleman. I pray you, what thinks he of our estate?
Even as men racked upon the sand, that look to be washed off next time.
You have not told his not the king?
No, nor it is not meet he should. For though I speak to you, I think the king is but a man as I am. The violet smells to him as it doth to me. The element shows to him as it doth to me. All his senses have but human conditions. His ceremonies laid by, in his nakedness he appears but a man. And though his affections are higher mounted than ours, yet when they stoop with the like wing. Therefore, when he sees reason of fears as we do, his fears our doubt, be of the same relish, as ours are. Yet in reason no man should possess him with any appearance of fear, lest he, by showing it, should dishearten his art.
You may show what outward courage he will, but I believe, as cold as the night is his, he could wish himself in chains up to the neck, and so already he were, and I by him at all adventures, so we may take cheer.
By my troth, I will speak my conscience of the king. I think he would not wish himself anywhere but where he is.
Okay, we have to pause here. This, and you need to write it in the margin, it's not one of the questions. This is an example, this entire scene of this, dramatic irony.
Because Henry's speaking about himself, like,
And nobody in the scene knows it but us.
Right.
That's why we call it dramatic irony, because we know something the characters in the scene do not know. That he speaks, for instance, he says several times, I think the king is but a man as I am. So that creates some irony. And irony is often humorous, because we know what he's saying, but nobody there does. I think he would not wish himself anywhere but where he is. So you see how that works. Bates, John.
When I will the king were here alone, so should he be sure to ransom, and the many poor men's life saved.
I dare to say you love him not, so ill to wish him here alone. Howsoever, you speak this to fuel others' men's mind. Methinks I could not deny anywhere to so contented as in the king's company. His cause being just and his quarrel honorable.
That's more than we know.
For more than we should seek after, for we know enough within the fear of the king's subject. If these cause be wrong, our obedience to the king wipes the crime of it out.
Okay, this is interesting. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but they're talking about the idea kind of a just war. I know you had that conversation across the hall. Not in a theological sense or anything like that. But he says, methinks, this is Henry, I could not die anywhere so contented as in the king's company, his cause being just and his quarrel honorable. And Williams questions, but that's more than we know. Do we know that the cause is honorable? And so the rest of this dialogue between the two is Henry and particularly Williams discussing, is this the problem is, if you're in this case, I think these are, the church is more Roman than the church most of us are part of, Protestant. The Roman church believes that before you die, you take the last rites. So if there's any unconfessed sin in you, then you would be covered, and then you could die. But what if you die, like, even the fighting that you're fighting is unjust because it's an unjust war. The king has asked you to fight an unjust war. And maybe they're Russian soldiers right now who feel like it's unjust to fight against Ukrainians. The worry spiritually would be, if I'm fighting an unjust war, I'm sinning. And I'll die with sin on my heart, and I won't go to heaven. Now, most people, believe they would go to purgatory, but you wouldn't go right to heaven or whatever. That's why you get these last rites. So that's the context of the conversation. Bates says, if his cause be wrong, our obedience to the king wipes the crime out of us. If our obedience is a good thing, that's what Bates is saying. And obedience wipes out injustice. You see, does that make sense? His injustice is why it doesn't apply to us, because I'm doing it out of simple obedience. Anyway, William.
But if the cause be not good, the king himself hath a heavy reckoning to make. When all those legs and arms and heads chopped off in a battle shall join together at the latter day, and cry all, we died at such a place, some swearing, some crying for a surgeon, some upon their wives left poor behind them, some upon the debts they owe, some upon their children wholly left. I am afeard there are few who die, and well that would die in a battle. For how can they charitably dispose of anything when blood is their argument? Now if these men do not die, well, it will be a black matter for the king that led them to it, who to disobey were against all proportion of subjection.
So their blood is on the king's hands. If it's not a just war, then they're dying, and they're going to be punished for it. That's a possibility, because they died. They'll be punished spiritually. It's the king's fault. So King Henry's going to try to defend that.
So if a son that is by his father sent about merchandise to sinfully miscarry upon the sea, the impudence of his witness by your rule should be imposed upon his father that sinful. Or if a servant under his master's command, transporting a sum of money, be assailed by robbers and die in many reconciled iniquities, you may call the business of the matter the author of the servant's damnation. But this is not so. The king is not bound to answer the particular endings of his soldiers, the father of his son, nor the master of his servant. For they propose.
Purpose.
Okay, yeah. For they purpose not their death with a purpose their service.
Would you underline that? It starts with the king. You see that? It's line 160.
The king is not bound.
The king is not bound to answer the particular endings of his soldiers, the father of his son, or the master's servant. These are three examples that he gave. For they purpose not their death when they purpose their services. So when the king, even if it were an unjust war, if the king orders you to go into battle, is he ordering you to die?
No.
Is it a possibility you'll die? But does he want you to die?
No.
That's why you can't blame the king for the person's death. Yeah,
The king is not bound to answer particular any of them, so.
keep going. The Father, Son, the Master,
The Father,
Servant.
Son, nor the master of the servants, what they purpose, nor their death when they purpose their service.
Right, so you can't blame the king for your death, because he didn't intend you to die. Unless he did, like he's lined up, he's gonna shoot you, that's not what he's doing. You may get killed or not.
And they volunteered to be, or some of them probably were volunteers to be in the army, whereas not drafted in, so.
That adds another layer of,
Right.
of excuse or defense for him. Very good. All right, Celeste. No, Henry.
Besides, there is no king. These calls never says spotless. If it comes to the
Arbitrament.
arbitrament of swords, can try it out with all unspotted soldiers.
Okay, again, he can't just fight with people that are clean of their sins, that he can't do that. So he's gotta pick people maybe who are not. Now, Taylor, you're with me right here on this? Okay, keep going.
Some, peradventure, have on them the guilt of premeditated and contrived murder. Some of beguiling virgins with the broken seals of perjury. Some making the wars their bulwark, that have before gored the gentle bosom of youth with pillage and robbery. Now, if these men have defeated the law and outrun native punishment, though they can outstrip men, they have no wings to fly from God. War is his beetle, war is his vengeance, so that here men are punished for breach of the king's laws, and now the king's will. Where they feared to death, they have borne life away, and where they would be safe, they perish. Then if they die unprovided, no more is the king guilty of their damnation than he was before guilty of those impieties for the which they are now visited. Every subject's duty to the king is the king's, but every subject's soul is his own.
See that you want to underline that? He says, every subject's duty is to the king, but every subject's soul is his own. So your duty to the king as a subject, but you're responsible for your soul. You can't blame someone else if you're going to hell. Yeah.
I don't really agree with him when he says that the will is your king's, but every subject's soul is his own. It's because I guess if as King Henry's taking all the will of the men, because some of the men might not want to fight, so he kind of claims responsibility over them. I feel like if he sends them into battle.
But his argument is that he's not sending them in order to die. It's not like he is going to put them out there knowing that they're going for the purpose of being killed. He's like lining them up as a, what do you call it, when you get shot, firing squad. They may die, but that was not his purpose. Now this is Henry's argument. That is not his purpose in sending them to battle. That's what he would say.
I feel like then we could say I send you into, let's say, a place you have a 50-50 chance of dying. I send you, you don't get a choice. If he comes back out not alive, did I kill him or not? Because he might not have entered the box should I have not sent him.
Yeah, that would be a good counter argument to the one he made. So you made a good point, but he's making the argument that because he didn't. Yeah, you might have 50%, but I don't want you to die, and I'm not intending you to die. That's all he said. But you made a good point there, Henry.
Therefore should every soldier in the wars do as every sick man in his bed, wash every mote out of his conscience, and dying so, death is to him the advantage, or not dying, the time was blessedly lost, wherein such preparation was gained. And in him that escapes, if we're not sin to think that, making God so free an offer, he let him outlive the day to see his guidance, his greatness, and to teach others how they should prepare.
'Tis certain every man that dies ill, the ill upon his own head, the king is not to answer it.
I do not desire he should answer for me, and yet I am determined to fight lustily for him.
I myself heard the king say he would not be so ransomed.
Again, dramatic irony.
Aye, he said so to make us fight cheerfully, but when our throats are cut, he may be ransomed, and we never the wiser.
Okay, you notice that Williams is disagreeing with Henry. Henry is saying that the king himself would not be ransomed. We talked about what that meant. And Williams says, yeah, but when we're losing, I bet he'll go back on his word and gladly be ransomed rather than be killed. And so he's insulting the man standing right in front of him.
That's
Henry.
kind of.
Yeah.
How
Henry.
well is his disguise for them to not realize?
He has one of those mustaches.
That does it every time. And the glasses that go with it.
Yeah.
Look with the nose, too, the little funky nose.
You have to, what you have to suspend disbelief, Taylor. Taylor. You
Yes.
have to suspend your disbelief. You have to accept that he isn't, whether it makes sense or not. So, you might not believe that that would work, but for the sake of the play, you have, okay.
No, I'm saying, like, I know that. I'm just like, I just wonder how good his disguise was. Like, had they ever seen the king before?
Probably not.
Okay, that's probably why. Let's say, because if you saw him, you would.
But he is in disguise. He's got, the collar pulled up, that kind of thing. Williams, or Henry.
If I live to see it.
If I live to see it, I will never trust his word after.
You pay him then, that's a perilous shot out of an elder gun that a poor and private displeasure can do against a monarch. You may as well go but to turn the sun to ice with fanning in his face with a peacock's feather. You will never trust his word after. Come, 'tis a fool's saying.
Your reproof is something too round. I should be angry with you if the time were convenient.
Let it be a quarrel between us if we live.
I embrace it.
How shall I know thee again?
Give me any gauge of thine, and I will wear it in my bonnet. Then, if thou darst acknowledge it, I will make it my quarrel.
Here's my glove. Give me another of thine.
Or they exchanged gloves. Now, Henry felt insulted by Williams, although Henry's not admitting that he is the king. He says, after this battle, we're going to settle this. And so tomorrow, after the battle, if we see each other, how will we know each other? How are they going to do that?
Gloves.
And somehow they put the glove on their hat, whatever kind of hat they were wearing. And so they will recognize their own glove in the other guy's
Like those
hand.
gloves that you fill with air or water and you just fit it.
Probably not, not like
The
that.
latex. Yeah.
All right, so, William,
This will I also wear in my cap. If ever thou come to me and say after tomorrow, this is my glove. By this hand I will take thee a box on the ear.
whatever that means, it's you're gonna knock somebody, boxing, a box, I guess that's where the word comes from. When it hits you in the ear, if I see you tomorrow, he tells that to the king, not knowing it is the king.
If I ever live to see it, I will challenge it.
Thou darst as well behaved.
Well, I will do it, though I take thee in the king's company.
Keep thy word, fare thee well.
Be friends in English, we must be friends. We have French parliament enough. If you could tell how to write.
Indeed, the French may lay 20 French crowns to one they will beat us, for they bear them on their shoulders. But it is no English treason to cut French crowns, and tomorrow the king himself will be a clipper. Upon the king, let us our lives, our souls, our debts, our careful wives, our children, and our sins lay on the king. We must bear all, O hard condition, twin born with greatness, subject to the breath of every fool whose sense no more can feel but his own bringing. What infinite hearts ease must kings neglect that private men enjoy? And what have king that privates have not too? Save ceremony, save general ceremony. And what art thou, you idle ceremony? What kind of God art thou that sufferest more of mortal griefs than do thy worship?
Okay, pause just a minute. There's several questions here, but we won't get them right now. Let me just explain. He's saying that a king is less peaceful than the average person. The only thing a king has that the average person doesn't have is what he calls ceremony. And by ceremony, he means pomp, all the pageantry that goes with being a king, the retinue that follows you around, the entourage, the crown, the throne, you know, all of that stuff. He said, that's all I have, yet I don't have peace. You have peace. It's almost like I'd give that up to have the peace that a common person would have. Henry.
What are thy rings? What are thy comings in? O ceremony, show me but thy work. What is thy soul of adoration? Art thou of the place, degree, and form, creating awe and fear in other men? Wherein thou art less happy, being freer than they are fearing? What drinkest thou oft instead of homage sweet? But poisoned flattery? Oh, be sick, greatness, and bid thy ceremony give thee cure. Thinkest you that fiery fear will burn out?
Okay, I'll keep reading. Read that next line.
The titles blown from adulation.
Adulate. All right, we'll pick this up tomorrow. You have vocabulary due. I'm gonna write this down so
The
I'll know
second
where we
part,
are.
right?
Second part is due tomorrow.
When is it, Lady Testament?
It'll be the next week. Right, yeah, thank you. Remember, I don't want them, I want them written out. Hey, Taylor, not quiet.
Girl, you're always in a rush.
What are you rushing to?
Taylor, come on. All right. Hey, don't, please don't leave it like that. You can't. Go ahead. Hold on. Yeah, you next. See you later. See you later, Anna Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
All right, see you, Tim. Kathy, you sent me an email recently. Like it was Monday or something. Did you email me about something?
Yeah, because there's some grades in my code that says that I didn't do it.
Yeah, let's look at it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Um,
So basically, I throw away all my study guides once I'm done, but I have pictures of them because I promise they're mine. They have my name on them.
How do people?
This is vocabulary.
It says I might
Why would you throw it away?
because we finished taking
You
it.
have it in sand.
No.
This will all be in
But like this is my handwriting.
No.
You know, and like that's my handwriting and stuff. And like I highlighted and underlined stuff.
What is this?
That's the peace photography that I was.
Oh, okay.
And like this.
I was in the process of grading this. I don't know why I hadn't before. I'm not finished.
Okay.
So we're talking about, was there
So
any?
that's why I'm
Yeah, and
like.
then there's this that has the
Okay.
questions
All
and
right, okay, what about the vocabulary? This vocabulary.
then it's right
He's my least favorite. Yeah. Next.
Are we doing?
Yeah, we're writing it. I wrote it out for tomorrow.
All right, good. All right, and then I'll grade this.
Yeah.
All right,
Alright, thank you.
yeah. Ladies, did y'all need to?
Can we go to Mr. Feeney's during advisory?
Sure, all three of you?
Yes.
Okay, see you. Thanks for checking in.
Mr. Powell,
Yes, sir.